Jessica blocked me on everything after 3 years together, and I found out through a friend's Instagram story. She was there, smiling, arm in arm with a guy I didn't recognize. That same night, my bank access code failed, the shared account, locked, my toothbrush, charger and favorite hoodie, gone from her apartment. No call, no explanation, just erase. It took me a full minute to understand what happened. Not heartbreak, removal, like I'd been a wrong file, selected and deleted in one tap. By morning, I was pacing my living room like an idiot, refreshing her name, checking our old chat threads. Nothing. The blue ticks on our last conversation had disappeared. She hadn't even argued, just gone. I opened her contact one last time and saw, no longer available. That's when I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened the contact list and typed, Robert, her brother. The same Robert who once told me over dinner, if you ever hurt my sister, I'll sue you just for sport. I clicked his number. Robert speaking. Came his crisp voice. It's John. A pause. John? Yeah. I exhaled. I need a lawyer. There was a slow silence. I could imagine him leaning back in his chair, connecting the dots. Jessica, he said. She locked me out of everything. Took the joint funds, removed my access to our lease. She wiped me off like I was nothing. I'm not calling to beg her back, I'm calling to fight clean. You're serious? I am. Another pause, then the sound of clicking keys. Come in tomorrow at 9 a.m., bring every document you have. And just like that, Jessica's brother became my attorney. That night, I slept for 3 hours, no music, no TV, just the hum of the ceiling fan spinning above me like a question I couldn't answer. The next morning, I walked into Robert's office in a pressed shirt and trembling hands. I sat across from him as he laid out legal folders like Surgic. Our tools. She blocked you and removed you from the lease. That's enough to start. Not revenge, I said. Just fairness. He stared at me for a long moment. Do you still love her? I didn't answer, but he didn't press again. Robert worked like a machine, fast, focused. He had me gather screenshots, rental agreements, transaction histories. Within 48 hours, we filed a claim regarding the shared account. She had withdrawn my part of the deposit after blocking me. Jessica didn't respond. On the 5th day, she walked into the law firm lobby unannounced. When I looked up, I barely recognized her. Same coat, same shoes, but her expression had changed. It wasn't anger, it was disbelief. You really hired my brother? I stood. I needed the best. Her lips parted. He's my brother. And now he's my lawyer. Robert entered behind me, stone-faced. Jessica, if you're here to speak about the case, we'll have to do it in mediation. She blinked, stepping back. This is insane. Are you really doing this? You wiped me like a failed app, I said. Don't act shocked when I reset the system. Her eyes welled for a second, but then she forced a smirk. You're more dramatic than I thought. I stepped aside. I learned from the best. She didn't say anything else, just turned, heels clicking against the tile like punctuation marks. I didn't follow. Not this time. I never imagined Jessica would be the one to vanish. Not after 3 years of waking up to her hair on my pillow. 3 years of quiet breakfasts, planned anniversaries, and finishing each other's rants about delivery drivers. But it turns out, some people rehearse their exits long before they walk out the door. Jessica did it flawlessly. No fights, no warnings. Just silence, like the end of a movie I didn't know I was in. I met her in the middle of a terrible month. I had just moved to the city, fresh out of grad school, sleep-deprived and overqualified for the job I was working. I'd rented a cramped one-bedroom near the train tracks and hadn't decorated a thing. My mattress was still on the floor. I ate dinner standing up in the kitchen. One rainy evening, I was stuck in the grocery store because my umbrella had snapped. That's when I first saw Jessica, arguing with the cashier over an expired discount coupon. She wasn't rude, just precise, calm, but terrifyingly confident. By the time I was done buying instant ramen, she was outside too, phone in one hand, a baguette in the other, her coat soaked through. I offered to walk her under my useless, crooked umbrella. She gave me a once-over, smirked, and said, "You're really trying this hard for a stranger?" I'm just trying to not get electrocuted in this storm, I replied. She laughed. You're either very kind or very bad at flirting. I looked straight at her. Both. We walked 2 blocks together. She handed me her number before she left with a wink and the words, "Next time, bring a real umbrella." That night, I didn't eat. I just stared at her contact saved in my phone and thought, that was not luck, that was something else. Our first date was the next weekend. I wore a button-up that didn't fit well and she showed up 10 minutes late in a red dress that made every waiter stop mid-step. We talked about books we never finished, restaurants we pretended we'd tried, and our mutual dislike for surprise parties. She said she loved jazz but hated saxophones. I told her I couldn't swim but still liked the ocean. From that night on, we were locked in. Not loud, not messy, just quietly connected. Jessica had rules, unspoken at first, but I learned quickly. Rule 1: never show off on social media. I don't need people knowing what's mine, she said once, arms wrapped around me as we lay in bed. It makes them curious. Rule 2: never show weakness outside. She never cried in public, never admitted fear, not even when she got hit by a cyclist and scraped her elbow open. She just stood up, waved off help, and smiled through gritted teeth. Rule 3: never lie. I broke that one once. I told her I liked her brother, Robert. He was 2 years older than her, a litigation attorney with an ego that could fill a courtroom. The first time we met, he scanned me like a resume. "Finance guy, huh?" he asked. "Junior analyst," I replied, shaking his hand. He didn't let go for a second too long, like he was testing grip strength for dominance. "My sister has a terrible history with guys who wear pressed shirts and say smart things, just a heads up." Jessica rolled her eyes. "Ignore him, he thinks he's funny." "I am funny," Robert muttered, walking ahead. Despite his constant jabs, I never talked back. I respected him. He was protective, sharp, and far more honest than most brothers I'd met. Even when he didn't like me, he gave me advice. "If you're serious about her," he said once during a backyard barbecue, "don't coast. She doesn't like coasters, she likes drivers." That line stuck with me. I took it seriously. From that point on, I tried to be someone worthy of her. I learned how to cook the pasta she liked. I read up on the film directors she mentioned. I surprised her with tickets, playlists, and midnight coffee runs. I learned when to give her space and when to hold her tighter. Our rhythm wasn't perfect, but it was real. She had a habit of kicking off her shoes the second she got in. Always in the same corner of the apartment. I'd trip over them 3 times a week and never move them. It felt like home. She called me John with the spreadsheets. I called her Jessica with the rules. We were silly, comfortable, sometimes boring, but in the best way. Our arguments were quiet. Our reconciliations are quieter. Her laugh, when she really laughed, was this uncontrollable half snort that embarrassed her to death. I lived for it. So yes, when she vanished, I didn't believe it at first. 3 years, and she ended it with a block button? No confrontation, no accusations, not even a goodbye? I tried texting her once more from another number. The message turned blue, then it turned red, blocked. That's when I realized I hadn't been broken up with, I'd been erased. It was 2 days later that I saw Robert's name in my contacts and dialed. I don't know what I expected, maybe an insult, maybe he hung up the moment he heard my voice. But he didn't. He asked for details. He asked for documents. He asked for evidence. And then, in a professional tone, said, "I'll represent you." That decision burned Jessica's pride in a way I could never have planned. She showed up at the firm uninvited. "You're really doing this?" she hissed at her brother, hands clenched. Robert didn't even look up from his file. "He's a client. He's my ex. He's also your financial partner in a legal matter. You chose to initiate a unilateral withdrawal. That's on you." She turned to me, eyes flaring. "You could have called. You could have at least tried to talk." "You didn't want to talk," I interrupted. "You blocked me." Silence stretched. I was angry. "Then say that. Don't delete someone you spent 3 years building with." Her voice cracked, but she didn't let it break. Robert closed the file in front of him. "If either of you wants to settle this personally, leave me out of it. If not, let's proceed." She stormed out. Robert didn't blink. He leaned back in his chair and said, "She's prideful, always has been, but she won't win this one. She made it personal." And just like that, I had the one person I thought I'd never have on my side. Her brother, my lawyer. The first time I felt it, that unspoken shift in Jessica's behavior, was 4 months before she blocked me. It was subtle, at first. She stopped reminding me to pick up groceries. She didn't laugh when I mispronounced French food names, something that always used to crack her up. She started putting her phone face down on the table during dinner. I told myself it was work stress, a tight quarter, a big pitch is coming up. Everyone drifts sometimes. But then she started forgetting her sleepovers. Excuses followed. Late night at the office, too tired to Uber, have to wake up early. 3 weeks in a row, her side of the bed stayed cold. Still, I didn't ask. That's the part I hate looking back on. I didn't ask. Then one weekend, I dropped by her place unannounced. I knew the code. I always had. The moment I opened the door, I felt it, air that wasn't meant for me. The lights were on in the kitchen. There were 2 wine glasses in the sink. Her scarf was on the couch, and someone else's jacket was draped over the dining chair. I stood there, silently counting the shoes by the door. 4 pairs, 2 of hers, 1 of mine, and a new set I'd never seen before. Brown leather, polished, clean soles. They didn't belong to any of her girlfriends. Jessica stepped out of the bathroom, hair wet, holding a towel to her face. She froze when she saw me. "John?" I didn't speak. She blinked. "I didn't know you were coming." I noticed. She dropped the towel. I was just getting ready for bed." "Who's here?" "No one." I stepped aside and pointed at the jacket. "Then, who forgot their jacket?" Her eyes flicked toward it. Her lips parted. No sound came out. "Jessica. It's not what you think." "Then explain it." She inhaled, slow and sharp. "He left it. He stopped by earlier. A coworker. Nothing happened. I told him to go. I didn't feel like having company. Wine for 2. Lights still on. A jacket." She bit her lip. "You're making this into something it's not." "I'm asking. I haven't accused you of anything. You showed up without calling. What does that say about trust?" I looked at her for a long time. "You're deflecting." Silence. I left without saying another word. She didn't follow. That night, she didn't call or text. The next day, nothing. 3 days passed. Radio silence. When I finally texted her, the message didn't arrive. Blocked. No confrontation, no explanation, just erased. At first, I thought it was temporary, a fight blown out of proportion, but it wasn't. She'd made a decision, swift and surgical. Her name vanished from our Spotify playlists. Her location disappeared from Find My. Her photo albums were locked down. She even left our shared project folder for her parents' anniversary slideshow. 1 week later, I received a message from my landlord. "Hi John, Jessica has requested to remove your name from the co-lease. Said you agreed?" I hadn't. That's when I knew this wasn't distance. It was a war. The real breaking point came when I found out she had transferred the entire balance from our joint account. A fund we both contributed to equally, used for emergencies and travel. She wiped it, down to the cent, not a single message, not even a, "Hope you're okay with this." So I called Robert. And instead of yelling at me, he listened. "She really did that?" he asked, tone unreadable. "Yes." There was a long pause. "I always told her she was impulsive," he said, "but this is something else." The documents were filed within a week. Jessica was served by email. Since she had blocked me on everything else, she didn't respond. But 3 days later, Robert received an email from a private address. A challenge to our claim. No apology, no acknowledgement, just legal resistance. "She's serious," Robert muttered, reviewing the file. "This isn't about the money. She's trying to win something she doesn't even need." Her pride? He looked up. Her control. A week later, we were summoned to a preliminary mediation. The firm conference room was quiet, cold, and clinical. Jessica arrived late, looking like she hadn't lost a single hour of sleep. She wore beige, no jewelry. Her face was unreadable. She sat across from me like a stranger. Robert opened with facts: joint account access, lease name deletion, electronic trails. Jessica didn't respond. Her lawyer, a man named Clark, spoke instead. Miss Jessica asserts she made an emotional decision after a breakdown in communication. She's willing to offer 25% of the withdrawn funds as goodwill. Robert's pen tapped once on the table. She withdrew 100%. She argues the contribution ratio was 55 to 45. That's not reflected anywhere, Robert replied, calm but sharp, and emotional decisions don't override written agreements. Jessica finally looked at me, just once, and in that brief glance, I saw none of the girl I'd shared 3 years with, no softness, no flicker of guilt, just calculation. It wasn't a heartbreak, it was politics. She was trying to win something, maybe respect, maybe dominance, maybe just the last word. After the session, as I was leaving the building, I heard her voice behind me. "John?" I turned. She stepped closer, arms crossed. "This is how you deal with a breakup? Suing me?" "No," I replied. "This is how I deal with being robbed." Her jaw clenched. "You think you're some kind of victim?" "I think I deserve better than vanishing without a word. You showed up at my place uninvited. I was in our relationship uninvited too, apparently." She said nothing. I added, "You didn't end things, you escaped them." And I walked away. I didn't see her again for 2 weeks, until the second mediation. That's when things turned. Jessica filed a countersuit, claiming emotional distress. That I had shown up at her apartment aggressively, that I made unwelcome contact, that she had no choice but to block me for safety. When Robert showed me the report, I stared at the screen for almost a full minute. "This is fake," I said. "She's playing chess," Robert replied. "And she's sacrificing her own truth to do it." I wanted to scream, to storm her place and demand why she was rewriting our story like this, but I didn't. I chose silence. Instead, Robert filed a motion to submit our full text logs from the last 3 months, every message, every photo, every phone call record. The ones that showed I never called more than once, never showed up after the night with the jacket, never even sent a voicemail. We also submitted the shared purchase logs, the romantic getaways, the dinners I paid for, the subscriptions in my name she used for years. Jessica never responded to the motion. She didn't have to. She'd already made her move. The damage wasn't what she claimed, it was in what she wanted to prove, that she had the power to rewrite how we ended. Robert handed me the updated case summary in silence. "Still glad I'm your lawyer?" he asked dryly. I gave a small nod. "Only thing I did right in this mess." He closed the folder. "Get ready, she's going to push until you crack. She'll be disappointed." There's a kind of silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like unfinished sentences, withheld explanations, and air too thick to breathe in. That's what my apartment became after Jessica blocked me. Not quiet, just hollow. I'd sit at the kitchen table, where she used to eat breakfast with one leg tucked under her, and stare at her empty chair like it might fill itself. I didn't cry, I didn't scream, I just sat there with this strange sensation in my chest, like someone had cut a string I didn't know was holding me together. The worst part wasn't the betrayal, it wasn't even the lies, it was the erasure. 3 years, and suddenly, it felt like I'd hallucinated everything. The late-night calls, her hands in mine, her sleepy voice saying, "I'm glad it's you." All of it vanished without her needing to explain why, as if none of it mattered, as if I didn't matter. Robert worked on the case like it was just another file on his desk, but even he couldn't mask the small flickers of discomfort when he saw the screenshots, the texts she never answered, the transactions she signed off on, the playlist we shared, the photos she edited and posted, taken by him, and now, she was pretending I'd been some stalker in the background of her life. I'd always thought that when relationships ended, at least you'd have the dignity of a conversation, a reason, some sentences that begin with, "I think we need to talk." Instead, I got blocks, transfers, claims of emotional distress in a court brief. At night, I couldn't sleep properly. I'd lie in bed listening to every creak of the apartment. Some nights I swore I could still smell her perfume on the sheets. A faint citrus vanilla blend that now made my stomach ache. I tried washing the blankets, but the scent stayed in my memory. I started skipping meals, not intentionally. I'd make coffee, sit down, and then realize 3 hours had passed, the coffee cold, the sandwich untouched, my laptop still on the lock screen. Maria noticed first. She was Robert's assistant, sharp, observant, always 2 steps ahead of every document filing. I barely spoke to her at first, but she handled my paperwork with such precision it was hard not to feel seen. One morning while waiting for Robert in the meeting room, she glanced at me and said, "You've lost weight." I raised an eyebrow. "Is that your polite way of saying I look like hell?" She smirked, then softened. "No, it's my polite way of saying you should take care of yourself." I gave a tired nod, unsure how to reply. Then she reached into her bag and handed me a protein bar. "Don't make me write this off as a business expense," she added. I laughed. Just a little. For the first time in weeks. Maria didn't ask questions. She didn't treat me like a wounded bird or a courtroom scandal. She treated me like a person. And in the middle of Jessica's storm, that meant more than I could admit. But that didn't mean the storm passed. Jessica's second legal response hit harder than expected. Her team now claimed that during our relationship, I had created a controlling and emotionally manipulative environment. That I had restricted her social decisions, that I used money and silence as emotional leverage. The words stung, not because they were true, but because they were engineered to hurt, crafted by someone who knew exactly where my soft spots were. I remembered the night she sat on the floor of my apartment crying over losing a project client. I didn't say anything. I just brought her a glass of water, sat beside her, and held her hand until she stopped shaking. I remembered paying off the speeding ticket she forgot to handle, just so she wouldn't get hit with a license suspension. I remembered sitting through 3 hours of a theater show she loved, even though I hated every second of it, just to see her smile when the curtains closed. All of that, now rewritten as manipulation. I read the legal claim again, slower this time. It wasn't just about money anymore, it was about legacy, about pride. She wanted to win, not the case, but the narrative, the story of us. Robert, ever calm, asked if I wanted to counter the emotional damage claims. "No," I said. "I want to keep my dignity, even if she's throwing hers out." He raised an eyebrow. "You sure?" "I don't want to hurt her," I replied quietly. "I just don't want her version of the story to replace the truth." He leaned back in his chair. "You know, that's what separates people like you from people like her." I didn't answer. I couldn't. My chest felt too tight again. That night, I got another anonymous message, a shipping confirmation, an expensive wine glass set delivered to my old address. It was from Jessica's old favorite site, no name, no card, just her return address embedded in the billing slip. I stared at the confirmation email, my fingers hovered over the keyboard. I didn't write back. Instead, I forwarded it to the same delivery service with a collect on delivery request. Then I shut my laptop and sat in the dark for a long time. Not sad, not angry, just hollow. Maria texted the next day. "There's tea in the break room, the good kind, come before it's gone." I did. And for 10 minutes, I sipped chamomile in silence beside someone who didn't ask me how I was doing. She just sat there, present, steady. It made a difference. The emotional suspense didn't come from not knowing how Jessica felt. It came from knowing exactly what she was trying to do. She wanted me to break, to panic, to lash out. But I didn't. Because deep down, I had started to understand something. The girl I fell in love with might have existed once, the girl who smiled through bite-sized jokes, who curled into my chest after nightmares, who asked me if we could name our foot. Your dog Charles like he was royalty, that girl had disappeared long before the block. What I was facing now was someone else entirely. And it wasn't my job to fix her anymore. 2 weeks before the final hearing, Robert called me into his office with a tone I hadn't heard before. It wasn't legal, it was personal. "I need to show you something," he said. I followed him in, expecting documents or another motion, but instead, he handed me a manila envelope, unlabeled, thick. "What is this?" "Someone delivered it anonymously this morning, left it with reception." I opened it slowly, half expecting photos or threats. Inside were printed screenshots. Hundreds of them. Texts, messages, email drafts, from Jessica. And they weren't addressed to me. I sat down slowly as I flipped through the first few pages. They were all messages between her and Clark, her lawyer. Except Clark wasn't just a lawyer. He was also the man with the brown leather jacket. The one whose wine glass was in her sink. The one she claimed was just a co-worker. Robert didn't say a word as I processed it. He just stood with his arms crossed, watching the color drain from my face. The texts weren't just romantic, they were strategic. He's stubborn, but he's breaking. Once he loses the account claim, he'll come back crawling. Don't worry, I've got the emotional damage angle ready. We'll make it look mutual. After this is done, it's just you and me, and we get the apartment too. I never loved him. He was just predictable, boring, safe. That's not love. I flipped deeper. One of the final screenshots was dated 2 days before she blocked me. It was a message she sent to Clark at midnight. I'm deleting him tomorrow. If he reacts, we twist it. If he sues, we play the victim. Either way, we win. Something inside me went very, very still. This is real? I asked, voice flat. Completely verified, Robert said. IP addresses, timestamps, app logs, whoever sent this had access to her cloud. My hands gripped the envelope tighter. She didn't just leave, I muttered. She plotted. Robert leaned forward, elbows on the desk. And now you have a choice. What kind of choice? We bury this and proceed as planned. Win the financial case. Or what? Or we go for everything. Reputation, damages, perjury. If we prove the emotional claims were knowingly false, we flip this from a breakup to a fraud case. I stared at the folder, then at him. She's your sister. He didn't blink. And you're my client. I stood up, pacing once. You knew Clark, didn't you? Robert's jaw tightened. We were friends. I recommended him to her actually. That's on me. I exhaled slowly. She played everyone. He nodded. Even me. I sat back down. Do we know who leaked this? Not yet, but we're checking. There's a second email address listed in the headers, untraceable so far, but someone wanted you to see this. My mind began replaying everything. The cold glances, the fake victim act, the silence after I confronted her, the way she stormed into the firm not with regret, but with indignation, because her plan had cracked. Let's go for it, I said finally. Robert looked at me, eyebrows raised slightly. You sure? I nodded. She didn't just break my heart. She tried to erase my name and repaint me as the villain. He gave a rare approving smile. Good, because I've already drafted the motion. The next day, our firm submitted a supplemental claim, fraudulent representation, emotional manipulation, and tampering with electronic records. Clark, as opposing counsel and involved party, would now face a formal inquiry. The court would determine if Jessica and her lawyer had colluded to mislead proceedings. The moment the motion went public, everything shifted. Jessica didn't show up at the next scheduled meeting. Clark resigned from her case within 48 hours. And then, the second twist twisted even deeper. 3 days later, Robert received an email from a private inbox. Subject line, she's done worse, you deserve to know. Attached, a single video file, surveillance footage. Location, a private dinner event Jessica and I had attended during our second year together. The footage showed Jessica, sitting alone at a table, phone in hand. Then Clark, again, not introduced to me back then, walking up behind her, touching her shoulder. She didn't flinch, she smiled. They leaned in close, she turned her phone screen to show him something, and then, she kissed him. Not a friendly peck, a slow, full kiss, dated 7 months before she blocked me. Jesus Christ, I whispered. Robert shook his head. I don't know who's sending this, but someone out there wants you to win. For the first time, I didn't feel shocked. I felt tired, not angry, not betrayed, just done. Jessica hadn't just ended our relationship, she'd used it, bent it, weaponized it. She'd planned her exit not out of grief but calculation, and somehow, even knowing all this, I wasn't angry anymore. I was free. The courtroom was quiet, not the dramatic kind of quiet filled with tension and rising background music, but cold, clinical silence, just air conditioning humming and legal pads shuffling. Jessica entered late, her heels tapping slow and sharp against the tile. Her hair was curled the way she used to wear it when she wanted to be taken seriously, and her blazer looked new. She sat down across from me, eyes forward, posture perfect. Not once did she look in my direction. I didn't need her to, not anymore. Because I already knew what she'd done. The judge glanced over his notes and cleared his throat. Today's hearing will address the fraud motion submitted by the plaintiff, John Carter, regarding Exhibit C and D. Jessica stiffened. Robert stood, calmly placing the thick folder on the table. Your Honor, what we're presenting today are verified communications between Miss Jessica Carter and Mr. Clark Donovan, her former attorney and personal contact. The judge raised a brow. And these messages were gathered how? Submitted anonymously, verified independently, Metadata Co. confirmed their origin. The emails and messages were cross-checked with Miss Carter's known accounts. Her digital signature matches on 3 separate devices. Jessica's new lawyer, some junior stand-in with a nervous energy, tried to object. We believe these files were obtained without consent and could violate data. Robert cut in coolly. Your Honor, if the defendant wishes to claim they were fabricated, we're prepared to bring in our forensic IT analyst on short notice. The judge nodded. Continue. The courtroom screen displayed the first screenshot. Jessica's text. Delete him tomorrow. If he reacts, we twist it. If he sues, we play the victim. Either way, we win. Then the second, then the third. The judge's eyes narrowed with each one, and still, Jessica sat completely still. But her hand, it trembled, just slightly, on her lap. Robert spoke, voice steady and low. This was not an impulsive breakup. This was a coordinated strategy to remove Mr. Carter from a joint property and a shared financial account. The language used indicates clear manipulation and premeditated deception. Jessica's lawyer shifted, whispering something rapid in her ear. She didn't respond. She kept her gaze fixed on the floor. Then came the surveillance footage. The same footage from the charity dinner, the one where she kissed Clark, 7 months before she blocked me. The courtroom watched in silence. Jessica finally looked up when the clip ended. Her eyes didn't meet mine, they met Robert's. And in them, for the first time, I saw something real, not confidence, not defiance, fear. The judge leaned forward. Miss Carter, do you deny the content of these messages and this footage? Jessica's voice cracked when she spoke. No. No excuse, no defense. Just one syllable. Robert continued. In addition to fraudulent misrepresentation, we are also submitting grounds for damages, reputational and financial. Mr. Carter suffered not only monetary loss but character defamation under claims of emotional manipulation, which these messages now directly contradict. I didn't flinch, I didn't look away, I just watched her face. The judge nodded once, then addressed Jessica's lawyer. You'll have 5 days to respond in writing. Until then, this case remains active under fraud inquiry. We stood. The hearing was adjourned. Jessica didn't move. Even as people filed out, she stayed seated, hands clasped together, lips tight. I stepped past her without a word. But then, quietly, she whispered, John. I stopped, didn't turn around. You really won't say anything? I looked over my shoulder. There's nothing left to say. She stood slowly, her voice low. I made a mistake. No, I replied. You made a plan, and you executed it. You don't get to call that a mistake just because it didn't work. Her eyes filled, not with tears, but with something sharper. Regret twisted into disbelief. You were always so cold. No, I repeated. I was loyal. You were just too blind to tell the difference. She stepped closer. So that's it? I'm just the villain now? You wrote the script, Jessica, I said. Don't look at me like you didn't know how it would end. Her voice cracked. You don't miss me? At all? I paused for a moment, not out of hesitation, just to let the silence weigh. Then I said, I miss the idea of you, but she never existed. She stood frozen as I walked away. Outside the courthouse, the sky was overcast. The clouds hung heavy, the kind that promised rain without delivering it. Maria was waiting near the stairs, holding an umbrella even though it wasn't raining. How'd it go? She asked, voice quiet. I nodded. She admitted everything. Maria didn't. To smile, she just handed me the umbrella and said, You look like you need something to hold on to. We walked in silence for a bit before she added, You know, I used to think people like her were just cruel, but I think some of them are just scared. Scared of what? Of being seen, fully. You saw her too clearly, and maybe she hated that more than anything. I looked at Maria. Her hair was tied back in a messy bun. She wasn't wearing anything special, no perfume, no games, just presence. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. That night, I sat in my apartment with the lights off, listening to the city noise outside my window. 3 years of memories, gone in seconds. And yet, I felt peace, not victory, just release. I pulled out my old phone, the one with Jessica's texts still saved before she blocked me. I scrolled, I read the messages, I stared at the pictures. Then I deleted the entire thread. Every photo, every saved voice memo. Gone. She had blocked me, but I had let her go. And that's the difference. 3 months passed. 3 long months of legal filings, media whispers, and slow silence settling into something final. The court ruled in our favor. Jessica was ordered to return the full amount withdrawn from the joint account, plus damages. Clark Donovan was disbarred for professional misconduct. The ruling made local headlines under one of those painfully literal headlines: lawyer caught in romance fraud plot against client's ex. Jessica didn't attend the final verdict. Her lawyer submitted her absence due to emotional strain. Robert and I stood outside the courtroom after the ruling. He lit a cigarette, something I'd never seen him do before. "That's it then," he said, not looking at me. "Done." "Is it?" I asked quietly. He exhaled. "Legally? Yes. Personally?" He shook his head. "You'll carry this, not forever, but long enough to make you cautious." I nodded. "And you?" "I'll heal," he muttered. "She's my sister. But what she did, I can't protect that." We stood in silence for a few seconds longer before he added, "You were right to fight back. You did it better than most people would." I thanked him. We didn't shake hands. We didn't need to. The final blow hadn't landed in court though. It landed 2 weeks later, when the truth went public. Someone leaked the full communication archive online, not just to the media, to her company, her clients, her entire professional network. Every fabricated claim, every strategic message between her and Clark, every joke made at my expense. The screenshots trended for 2 days straight under a hashtag that turned her name into a meme. Brands she collaborated with publicly dropped her. The marketing agency she worked for issued a statement saying her values do not align with company integrity. Her bio vanished from their website overnight. I didn't leak it, Robert didn't either. But we both knew exactly who did. Maria. I confronted her gently, not accusing, just curious. She didn't deny it. "She ruined your name," she said, sipping from a tea mug. "I just gave her the same kindness back." "You hacked her cloud?" "Nope. I found Clark's work account open on one of our old shared systems. He'd synced everything. Dumb, arrogant, lazy man." I stared at her for a moment. "You risked a lot." Maria smiled. "Not really. I backed it up. Then I walked away. Besides, people like her count on silence. I just raised the volume." I didn't know what to say, so I said the only honest thing I could. "Thank you." She nodded, casual as ever. You deserved closure. She deserved noise. I didn't text Jessica. I didn't check in. I didn't watch her fall. I didn't care to. But her brother did give me one update. "She's gone underground," Robert told me. "Deleted socials, went quiet. She's trying to rebuild in another city." "Will she?" I asked. "She might," he said, "but she won't forget." "Good," I replied. "That's the only thing I wanted to keep." A year passed. I moved to a new apartment. Larger windows, quieter walls. One bedroom stayed empty, turned into an art room for Maria. She didn't ask, she just slowly started showing up, barefoot and familiar, carrying iced tea and her laptop, until one day she never left. We never announced anything, no posts, no big labels, just understanding. She knew the entire story, and she never once treated me like a project that needed fixing. One rainy evening, we stood by the balcony, watching the streetlights blur through the downpour. She asked, "If she ever comes back, what would you say to her?" I thought about it, really thought. Then I said, "I wouldn't say anything, I'd let the silence explain everything." Maria nodded, satisfied. "Good answer." We clinked glasses, her tea, my whiskey. We didn't toast to revenge. We toasted to survival. But my story didn't end quietly. It ended the day I received a box, no name, no return address. Inside, a dusty hardcover diary. It was mine. One I'd lost 2 years ago. The one I used to write in when Jessica and I first got together. The last page was missing, torn out. Taped to the inside cover was a folded sheet of paper, handwritten by Jessica. John, if you're reading this, it means I did one decent thing in the end. I found the diary in a box. I read a few pages, then I stopped. I didn't deserve to read the rest. I never apologized properly, not because I wasn't sorry, but because I couldn't admit how far I'd gone. It started with resentment, then curiosity. Clark was convenient. You were stable. But I didn't want stability. That was my mistake. You were good to me, every step of the way, and I treated your kindness like it was a weakness. I called your loyalty boring. I called your calm controlling. I turned your silence into an enemy when it was the only kindness I had left. You didn't deserve what I did, no one does. But if there's one thing I hope, it's that when you remember me, you don't think of the girl who blocked you. Think of the girl who, just for a while, didn't know what she had. And if you've already forgotten me completely, even better. Jessica, I read it once. Then again. Then I tore the letter into 4 perfect pieces and dropped them into the fireplace. I didn't need her apology. I didn't want her to regret. What I wanted, I had already built with my own hands. A new life. Free of her. Maria stepped in from the hallway, barefoot as always, holding 2 mugs. Who was the box from? She asked. No one is important, I replied. She handed me a mug. More tea? I shook my head and smiled. Let's open wine instead.